Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DETAUX, Designers Talk UX. So, Albert Einstein once said, information is not knowledge. The only source of knowledge is experience. You need experience to gain wisdom. Today, we have VethaVarshini with us, who is a web developer, and she coded her way out to become a UX designer at Think Design Collaborative. She writes on Medium, and she's a design thinking practitioner, and she's here to share her story with us. Hey Veda, welcome to DETAUX. How are you doing today?
Hi Atul, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thank you so much for coming in. And it was great to know about your story from moving from a web developer to a UX designer, right? So I thought it'll be great to share with everyone on our channel. So could you share how did you transition from being a web developer to a UX designer?
So yes, I used to be a web developer before I transitioned to user experience design, and the journey is kind of not a straight line. So when I used to be a developer, I was used to taking in the designs that came from the designers and then developing them as it is. So I've been doing that for quite a while. I used to freelance back in college, and then I took up a job in a startup after college where I used to work as a web developer. And that was the time that I noticed that a lot of thought process which gets put into the design about why you think a certain way, why you think a certain design is done a certain way. For example, why some stuff is represented in a specific way, or why there's a button in that place. There's a lot of whys which you can't really answer from the position of a web developer. And so I've been working since my second year of bachelor's in technology. So throughout that time, whatever I gauged were my skill sets. I started to realize that I can do more justice to them, to my skill set, and there's a lot I can contribute from the role of a user experience designer. That's how I made the switch.
Awesome. So how did you get this opportunity? Like, how did you transition? You were working as a developer, you mentioned, right? So how did you get your first opportunity?
I'm a self-taught designer, right? So while I used to work as a web developer, and I used to work with some really amazing designers, and that was my first exposure to design. And then I started digging in different resources, different places, and just trying to learn about what user experience design is. A lot of myths that I debunked myself about what designers do and how the entire job role of a user experience designer is. And then I learned what was necessary, built a portfolio, and then applied for a few companies, and then got it all within a span of about 6 to 8 months.
In about 6 to 8 months, you prepared yourself from being a developer to becoming a designer.
Yes.
How is that? Like, can you elaborate a little more on your learning experience? Like, how did you self teach yourself?
Sure. So I like to say that I am more of a research mindset. So once I figured that maybe I can offer more to the role or my contributions to the projects or the company, once I realized that maybe web development is not where I can give my full, then I started to research more about what user experience designers do. And maybe it's about the depth that I went into while I researched, because I could cover some aspects of what a user experience designer does, which people don't really give it to you, which people don't really spoon feed to you when you tell them that you want to break into UX design. So yes, I put some effort in trying to understand what exactly the role of a user experience designer is and what they do, and how the scope of it varies from organization to organization and from within different workspaces. Because That's something that I see a lot of people who now want to break into UX design struggle to know. They have a very I mean, we can't really blame them, but they tend to have a very narrow mindset about what a user experience designer does. So it took me a while. Of course, it had a good amount of effort go into it to make sure that I'm learning the actual stuff and not just basing my learnings off of what of other people's hearsays or their experiences. So I made sure that I collect the experiences from as many sources as I could, so I can gauge for myself about how much I can contribute as a UX designer to a company.
Awesome. So one, I think difficulty a lot of self-taught learners in general feel is having the one source of truth of knowledge, right? Because on the internet there are diversity of resources, and since they are not validated by someone, right? So someone who has at a position to mention that okay, this is right or wrong. So how did you face that difficulty? Did you have that difficulty, or um, how do you validate something that this is right or this is wrong, whatever has is mentioned over the internet, right?
Right. So one thing I learned while I did all my research is that there is no steadfast rule that tells you that this is what's to be done or this is what a user experience designer does. So because there's no one process written in stone for you to follow for all the projects or that tells you what a user experience designer does. So that's also I mean that takes me back to one main observation I see in a lot of people who are trying to break into design. Uh, they don't research enough, because when you're trying to learn about something, you have to go that extra mile in getting to know about that domain in full. So since I did that, I think yeah, basically just like what you said, trying to make sure, I mean, although there are a couple of different resources in the internet that tell you different things about how user experience designers work or what they do, so it was important for me to make sure that I went, or I mean, I took what I had to from each of them.
How has the mindset changed then? Do you always have like a relapse going back to the web developer mindset, or the engineering mindset, and how do you balance these roles?
Well, if you actually take the true essence or the meaning of what an engineer means, even from the designer's point of view, you're not very different from what an engineer does. It's all
Okay.
about crafting experiences or crafting products. Maybe you contribute to it from different phases, but in the end, you are doing the same thing. So, although the core of being an engineer has always stuck with me. So whether I'm taking the role of a web developer or a user experience designer, I don't let myself deviate from that. I mean, that's a given because I come from a bachelor's of a bachelor's of technology and computer science background. So that's always a part of me. But about your question about how often I switch between the mindset of being a web developer and from the seat of a UX designer. Uh, so since the beginning, I've always been gravitated towards highly collaborative roles, and user experience design being one of them. The main quality that a lot of user experience designers would say is like the core quality of the core skill of user experience designer is got to be empathy. So you empathize with not just, I mean, especially sitting from a highly collaborative role like user experience design, you often have to put yourself in the shoes of a web developer and in the shoes of your leadership, your engineering team, everyone. So I found that part kind of easy, considering, I mean, having lived in most enchanting cities of southern India and growing up in new places and cultures, I easily communicate and work with people from different calling. So that's in a way it's been easy to do that.
Anything you want to say to all the developers who would want to move to design? Like, what should be their approach?
Well, I think one main skill that those from the who are like trying to transition from being a web developer to user experience design, one main skill that they can work on is communication, and an extra one, which is ownership. I think these two are really essential for web developers to cultivate in themselves when they're trying to transition to becoming a UX designer, because when you're a web developer, your job role does not really expect you to have these skills. Because once you become a UX designer, or when you want to transition to UX designer, you have to understand that, like I mentioned, there is no steadfast rule to tell you that this is what's to be done. People are not going to tell you that, yeah, take this page, so design it as it is, like it's here and everything. So there's not one process which is written in stone for you to follow for all projects. So trying to transition from any other career to UX design itself demonstrates some pretty kick-ass research skills, because you're stepping out of a very comfortable space into the unknown. So how to explore this space? What's the right things to do? What's the wrong things to do? Am I going down the right path? These are the things nobody validates for you or assures you at every point. And you will be at peace when you realize that, when you understand that everybody's process, everybody's journey, everybody's perspective, their understanding, it's all different from one another, which is why there is no one Bible that you can blindly follow to take this path. And another one being, you shouldn't always just wait for someone to give you orders. You have to take the lead, because you have to feel that kind of ownership with your product. That's something that people, again, they don't expect you to have that skill as a web developer, but as a user experience designer, I would consider that a very essential skill. And the other one that I mentioned, which is communication. When you're a web developer, you just talk to people who try to talk to you. But from the role of when you're in the role of a user experience designer, when I mean communication, I don't mean you have to speak good English, but I mean to say that as user experience designers, you tend to talk to different groups of people to make a project, to develop a product space. So you have some designs and you want to describe or to present those flows and the screens and the designs to maybe the leadership. The way you chose to present it to the leadership, or the perspective from which you present it to them, the kind of terminologies you use, these are different when you're presenting your screens and your designs to the leadership. They're different when you're trying to present the same thing to the service team. They're different when you're trying to present these to the web development team. The concept is the same. The screens are the same, the designs are the same, the flows are the same. But the way you pitch it to them will have to be different in a way that they understand. Because imagine you're telling the same things. The way you talk to web developers, right? You go a little techie, and then imagine pitching it the same way to the leadership. There's a chance they won't get it at all. So this is the direction of better communication that I was talking about when I say communication is important for a web developer.
Completely get it. Yeah, and this is something we always face, right? And we are and there are so many times we're just presenting, like, okay, we presented to these people, then we have to convince everyone to go ahead with the design, and then you have to communicate in their language, and it completely makes sense that you should be a good communicator, and you should be able to express your ideas and what you're trying to imagine and put them into words and then explain it to them in their language. And again, you're empathizing with them, with your user audience at the end of the day.
The certification courses, even today, if you take the Google certification course that we have, a lot of aspiring designers they make it a point, they kind of have it like a milestone that, I should finish this first.
Yes.
It's really helping me pace up to landing a job. But from my personal experience, I've literally seen it. If you just have, consider a resume which has just a Google certification course. Let's just say it's someone trying to transition from another career into UX design, and resume one has done a Google certification course in UX design, and there's another resume which hasn't done any certification course at all, but they have 2 hands-on projects that they actually deliver to clients. Trust me, from my experience, it's the second resume that holds more weightage, and it's not this one that of the person who did the Google certification course. So Because every project is different, right? Because at the end of the day, a recruiter would want to know how you would face different problems head on and solve them. And when it comes to certification courses, not just that it's just theory to the most part, but even if there is a project that you worked on, who is assessing it? How do you measure the success metrics of your project? That's also really important in evaluating what kind of a contribution you made to that company or to the clients by working on that project. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope we connect again over more conversations. In the meanwhile, let our viewers listen to this, and we'll connect again. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. That's
Thank
nice
you so much
talking
for
to you.
coming in. Thank you for your time. So, guys, that's it for today. We hope you liked the X2UX story. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section down below. If you'd like to see more videos, please consider subscribing. Bye bye. Take care.